Hey guys, Thomas the Jr. here, aka Mustached, and I'm here to review the movie Werewolves Within. If you end up enjoying this review, then please consider joining my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. Alright, now that the shilling is out of the way, Werewolves Within is actually a video game movie in a technical aspect. I was not aware that there was even a video game called Werewolves Within, but sure enough, after just doing a basic Google search, yes, it is indeed a video game. Or at least it was one first. So the video game, from what I could glean, is actually a deduction game, sort of like Clue, Secret Hitler, or the more so recently popular game Among Us. And this is where you're trying to, just using Among Us as an example, since that is currently the one that is, current. You're trying to find the imposters, and in this, you're trying to find the werewolf. Or werewolves, plural, as I guess the game goes on. So, with that being said, in terms of a video game movie, this video game movie has an advantage over a lot of other ones, as in terms of making a story, it was able to make its own story, since the video game version is more so, again, just people playing a deduction game. So really, you can make a story about pretty much any amount of characters and pretty much tell your own story. So, in that regard, and it kind of caught me by surprise, is that they were able to, again, tell their own story. Now, we're going to get into if that story was good or not. So, with that being said, we'll go over the plot, spoilers abound about who it is, and so on and so forth. So, the movie starts off with a bizarre quote, if I've ever seen one, from Mr. Rogers about kindness and all that good stuff. And as the movie opens up, we see this bearded fellow who's texting and fiddling around, and he's seeing some tussles in the trees in the distance, and we don't know what's going on, but he gets attacked, so we don't really get to know who that guy was, but he's dead. We cut to 25 days later, and we follow our lead character named Finn, the sheriff guy in the middle of the poster there, as he meets up with a post officer, office lady named Cicely, my bad. So, as he's sort of moving around with her, we start to introduce ourselves to our little town that we are sort of going around. We have Mr. Parker and his wife, who we see early on. We see Janine, who's... I just wrote that in my notes. I didn't write which character she was exactly. So anyways, as we are continuing to meet our characters, we have the gay couple, we have an engineer lady in the far right there, Trish, the writer, who also is like a crafter. She's like at the bottom left right there, or the slightly bottom right there, I should say. Anyway. So we're getting introductions out of the way still. So there's a little bit of setting up, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just, that's, just sort of how we're sort of casually introducing this town. So as he's continuing to travel with Cicely, he goes up to the person who lives the furthest away, and there are very clear signs on the wall, on the streets as he's heading there to not probably go up there, but he does so, and he almost gets shot for it, but he meets our last character, who sort of acts as our most suspicious slash, red herring character. Uh, and what leads to an equal amount of sus is that when he comes back, Cicely kind of casually tries to excuse it off. So there's some suspicion already happening pretty early on. But as he goes to continue hanging out with her, she goes in more casual wear, and as they're sort of talking and kind of almost flirting at this point, they actually almost kiss each other, since they're like partying and flirting and doing all this stuff. However, a call by his ex cuts him off. So we get our first little hint that there's something amiss as the character named Trish loses her dog. And she's like freaking out. And more people are coming in this little cabin that most of our movie will take place in. We see, again, one of the gay characters, Joaquim, or I think that's how you pronounce it, arrive there. We also meet our doctor, Dr. Ellis, as well, arrive there. We get our, crazy, I don't know if he's, a homeless character, or, I don't know what his job is in this town, but he's, with the engineer lady. So, after, everyone's, starting to complain, our lead character, Finn, goes to, check out the outside and starts to see all these claw markings. And indeed uncovers a new body. So another person has died. As I mentioned very briefly, Mrs. Parker and this older man, the older man is now dead. Her husband. So, she's grieving, and everyone's freaking out. And as they all sort of conglomerate into the building, they all start to chat and argue about what's going on, who's behind this, and conspiring about why people would do this. So that happens pretty early on. And the doctor is trying to figure out what's also going on. So she's sort of or at least for a very brief moment, our sort of, doctor, I guess. Her occupation is what she's trying to do. Even though certain shots are trying to make her seem suspicious, which is a bit odd, but whatever. So anyways, as we see all the people, or a good chunk of the people in the cabin, are packing some heat. Some of them have, or most of them have weapons. While the doctor is working, one of the people, this rounder gentleman, whose name I completely don't remember, gets grabbed. So this is the second target, or third, I guess, and this happens to be Trish's husband, is now taken down. So the doctor collects more blood, and she eventually exclaims that there's a potential for a werewolf, but will we get to that in a bit. So we have our big we have our sort of shift in perspective as the doctor is claimed to have killed herself. She is the one taken down next, and we sort of see the guy in the room that she was in, and he claimed that. So as the group remerges into the main room, the suspicion is rising among them, and they're all sick of staying there, so they start to leave one by one. Cicely and Finn are essentially they're left, and we start to see people attack other people. We start to see Trish attack one of the gay couple guys, Devin. We see the big hunter guy, I'll call him that since I don't recall his name. He has like goggles and a gun and all this other stuff. And we see the murder hobo, I guess I'll call him that, his name is Marcus, grab some claw weapons. So everyone's gearing up, and everyone's suspicious, and everyone's like trying to get at each other. So, yeah. And during this sort of debacle of people killing people, we have one of the gay guys, Keem, I believe, killing Trish. And the hunter's name is Parker, by the way. I wrote his name later on in my notes. Keem threatens Cicely to kill her. Parker's there, and he kills Parker, and Parker then goes to attack Finn, thinking he's the werewolf, and he defends himself. But Queen, even though getting shot, he manages to shoot back and get Parker down. So as our lead, Finn, is sort of making his way back inside, where he initially was hanging out with Cicely, he notices some newer suspicions, including a package and this pin that he finds. And based off of this one room, he comes to the conclusion that Cicely was indeed the werewolf all along. And she explains how she planted, fake evidence like a knife to sort of subside the trail elsewhere. And it did so pretty effectively in terms of what the movie was trying to accomplish here. So she begins to transform, and the red herring guy, Emerson, arrives to help out, actually. So they both attack her. Our lead uses some axes. He stabs her in the neck, but she gets up. But then she gets shot by the wife, the one who we see mourning throughout the entire movie, and then she suddenly just has a gun, she's suddenly there, and she suddenly shoots Cicely with a grave amount of confidence. And that is where our movie ends, in terms of our story. So, in terms of a whodunit, there is an unfortunate scene in this movie in terms of the meta-knowledge that people on the outside watching in would probably get instantly. There's one line somewhere in the early middle-ish part of the movie where they're threatening each other and suspicion is rising, where one of the people points to Cicely and says outright, "You could be the werewolf." And she points to herself and him and says, "Well, we're the two new people. We so we're the least amount of suspicious people. But when she immediately says that, it actually only raises her suspicion, at least for us, the audience. For the movie, for the characters in the movie, it is pretty effective in terms of trying to subvert what the characters are assuming, because people are assuming that it's murders that are based off of like this thing that's being built in the town already, so it has to have been someone in the town already, not someone new. So in that regard, in terms of just pure character, it is effective, but again, for us, it is unfortunate that it only raises suspicion. And it did so much more to me. Now, when this movie was being promoted, and it was the first promotion I've seen of it was at E3, was that this was supposed to be a comedy horror. And in terms of comedy, I didn't really find myself laughing all that much throughout the entire movie. So I'm not sure why they were trying to promote it as a comedy horror. I don't really get that vibe from this movie that much. If anything, they should have promoted it as a mystery horror and written it a little bit more tightly as a mystery horror. I think that would have been way more effective. In terms, because that's what this is. It's a mystery. You're trying to figure out who done it. That's the whole point. So in terms of it being a mystery, having the red herring is a typical trope. And in terms of who it is, well, it ends up becoming pretty obvious again in the middle part of the movie. And that's something you want to try to avoid doing, I feel. Or if you're going to make everyone appear suspicious, again, as this movie attempts to do, I think you need a bit more reworking in terms of that particular character, Cicely. Have her just be associated with the town already, because what that allows to do, the movie to do, is account for her being there. There's a certain level of suspicion, but it's not as if, the whole thing of her being new doesn't get brought up. So that level of suspicion is dropped, but there could easily just be a replaced suspicion, if that makes any sense. And again, what we were seeing people doing, from the doctor to her suspicious, sort of little moments. Again, there are certain points and things of that nature that, do help in that regard. And it is plural, so I'm pretty sure there should have been at least one more. I think that would have helped in that regard as well. Werewolves Within. It does seem kind of odd that there's only one in this movie, and there's quite a few characters, so picking one other person probably would have been pretty easy to do. And, that's when things get interesting, I think, in terms of who done it, especially if there's more than one. You can have the two types of suspicion. You can have the person who's doing a little bit more obvious and way more suspicious things, and then you can have that other person sort of more in the background, who you're sort of starting to lose track of a little bit, maybe, perhaps, through very clever work, in terms of, even down to what the camera is doing, what the characters looking like. These things matter in terms of what we are seeing. Again, the Doctor is a very good example of that. In the reverse, she gives off very suspicious looks, as if she already knows something, even though she's trying to figure it out. I think that would have been a strong candidate for the obvious werewolf, and then have Cicely be the non-suspicious werewolf. Or, if you don't want to do two females, that's fine. You could have one of the bigger guys, but not the red herring character, for example, be the other werewolf. And again, just rework it to be that way. So yeah, in terms of it being a comedy horror, again, not really well represented. So I think this movie was slightly miscategorized, at least when it was being promoted. Even the trailer kind of gave off that vibe that it was going to be like, haha, like, oh, we all have guns, like, haha. But I don't know. Again, actually watching the context of why they would have guns does sort of still kind of pop up out of nowhere. So yeah. In terms of a rating, this movie, I would say it's okay. I'd probably give it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Again, I feel like the mystery aspect could have used a little bit of reworking in terms of like, making the clues in them of themselves a bit more effective. I feel like the misleading part of that movie was a little bit weak, or at least didn't feel that strong. Giving him, the sheriff, more of a very clear detective-esque sort of vibe to him probably would have helped, since, he is sort of our lens for this whole experience. Having him work in that sort of role would help a little bit more. He's trying to de-escalate, and that's his only role in this movie. At least when he's talking to the people, that seems to be his primary focus. And, in terms of things being a mystery, it's really interesting when you start to build up these characters and you start to, the whole testimony aspect of that. There isn't too much of the testimony thing in this movie, and I think that's where the movie definitely needs a lot more work, and that's why my rating is not as strong, because in terms of being objective, again, the classification of what type of movie of this seems again very misleading. Again, it seems more like a mystery murder, and again, in that regard, since it has that context about, a whodunit with teeth, the line above the title there, if that is the case, it should be written as a whodunit. There should be more, or, they should try to emphasize of like, oh, there's a bit more mystery, or there's a bit more, maybe there's another character who's a red herring that would, that doesn't make it completely obvious that, it's not going to be this this guy, because he's away from everyone, and he's the big burly guy, and, he seems like he's going to kill people, but no. I think if they had one other red herring character on the opposing side, someone who's already in the cabin, I think that would have been extremely effective. In terms of, since you're looking this way, and now you're looking this way, again, the character who it is, that being Cicely, she can now more go under the radar, even if, they alter it to it being, she's already a part of the town and not she's new to the town. Because again, when that comes up, there's a certain level of suspicion that's immediately arisen, and that is unfortunate. But that is my review of Werewolves Within. And if you ended up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. The first will head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.